Acceptance and Commitment Therapy, ACT, is a model for helping people in various situations. It is a system that operates mainly without diagnosis and instead treats the hindrances to a flexible and value-driven life. This video series explains the differences between the factors that lead to a rigid or flexible personality. The topics are set in a fixed order. The first of the two alternatives for each position in the hexaflex is likely to promote rigidity. The second of two options is expected to encourage flexibility. So, welcome, and I hope you will have a learning experience watching this video. ACT is a complex system, but the good part is that it works. If you are ready, here is the first part. Cognitive fusion versus cognitive diffusion. Acceptance and Commitment Therapy, ACT, is a therapeutic approach that focuses on helping individuals live a more flexible and values-driven life despite painful thoughts or emotions. One of the core concepts in ACT is the distinction between cognitive fusion and cognitive diffusion. Here are some key points on these two concepts. Cognitive fusion. So, let's try to define cognitive fusion. Cognitive fusion occurs when individuals become entangled or fused with their thoughts, viewing them as literal truths about reality. In this state, ideas are often taken at face value without questioning their validity. Fusion often leads to behavior driven by the content of thoughts, even when those thoughts are unhelpful or inaccurate. This can lead to avoidance of experiences, rigidity in behavior, and getting stuck in negative thinking patterns. Let's try some examples to make it easier to understand. I'm a failure. If someone is fused with this thought, they might avoid challenges because they believe they'll inevitably fail. I'm not lovable. A person fused with this belief might avoid close relationships, fearing rejection. Fusion tends to result in behavioral inflexibility, as individuals act strictly based on their thought content rather than in alignment with their values or the present moment. This can also be described as rigidity. A small case study. A person, let's call him Ted, has the thought that, no matter what I do, they will discover who I really am, and then I'm totally screwed. This is the thought that has become Ted's truth. He is sure about this. It is just a fact. When he meets people, Ted tends to look down. If there is a challenge in front of him, he doesn't take it. Because he knows in his mind that the only thing that will happen is that he will fail, and when he fails, everybody will discover. So he stays quiet, and he stays safe. He cannot be discovered as long as he doesn't expose himself. The fear of exposure becomes Ted's directive. He is locked in with his mind's acceptance of this fact. At this point, Ted is not aware of his shortcomings. He feels lost and out of pace with his surroundings. Here is a small challenge. Check how you behave in different situations and see if you have thoughts about yourself that hinder you from taking part in activities or hinder you from exposing yourself. Cognitive diffusion. Now, we introduce a word that isn't really a word. Diffusion. Cognitive diffusion is a process where individuals learn to diffuse or detach from their thoughts, seeing them as transient mental events rather than absolute truths. It's about changing how one interacts with or relates to ideas, not necessarily changing the thoughts themselves. Diffusion can help people reduce the impact and influence of unhelpful thoughts, leading to more flexible behavior and alignment with personal values. To make this happen, ACT uses different interventions. We use metaphors such as, thoughts are like clouds in the sky, just passing by. Or, thought can be placed on lives on a river, and they are watched as they float by. With this technique, the goal is to create a distance between the thoughts and the person. Observing thoughts from a distance gives the opportunity to evaluate and choose and to see thoughts as they really are, thoughts passing by. Some use mindfulness exercises. Observing thoughts without judgment, seeing them come and go. Mindful exercises help with the incorporated meaning of thoughts. If we test the mind's use of self-talk, we will find that a major part of thoughts is negative self-judgments. When using a non-judgmental observation, the differences between a single thought and the thought containing judgment can be observed. Another method is labeling thoughts, e.g., I'm having the thought that I'm a failure. The labeling will show the difference between a thought and what, until now, has been considered a truth. The reason these are steps in increased flexibility is the following. Through diffusion, individuals often see thoughts as just that, thoughts. They can then decide whether or not to act on them based on their values and the present situation. Again, here are some examples to explain the process. Recognizing, "I'm a failure," as a thought can free someone to take on challenges, even if there's a risk of failing. Seeing, "I'm not lovable," as a fleeting belief might help someone remain open to forming close relationships, regardless of fear. Let's get back to Ted and see how he is doing. The last we heard was that he hid. He stayed quiet and did what he could to not be noticed. He didn't take any chances and thought he could avoid discovery. What if we could change the character of his thoughts? Not make them go away. Experience tells us that thoughts don't go away, they keep returning. And if we think we have gotten rid of a thought, and it still returns, the chances are that we suffer a new blowback. So, instead, we help Ted acknowledge the thoughts and realize that they were just thoughts and mind tricks that played in his mind and didn't occur in real life. Then, he could take some small risks and then more significant steps. And even though his thoughts were there, he could direct his energy towards a challenge. The steps out of his believed truths may be scary for Ted, but even a small step in the direction of his values will give him more courage to take the next and maybe bigger step on the next occasion. What Ted has to realize is that even a small step is still a step in the right direction. In ACT, the aim isn't to eliminate or change difficult thoughts but to change our relationship with them. By fostering cognitive diffusion, individuals can lead lives with more freedom, flexibility, and alignment with their values rather than being dictated by their internal narratives. Ted's story is only one example of situations where fused thoughts can become a problem. Life is full of situations and experiences, and you most likely have your own experiences where you have acted according to your thoughts. Feel free to share your thoughts on this in the comments section below. This is the end of the first part of this series of ACT Hexaflex Explained. In the next part of this series, we will look into the terms self as content versus self as context. Check video 2 in this series and meet Ted again.
Welcome to part 2 of this series. Hopefully, you have already watched part 1 about fusion versus diffusion, but if you haven't, you can always watch the first video later. In the first video, we looked at the differences between diffusion and fusion in regard to thoughts observed as truths and how these truths affected actions. We also introduced Ted, our live subject, and some of his thoughts and struggles. The fused thoughts had a limiting effect on Ted's life, while the diffusion of thoughts could help him make different choices for his life. This second video is about 2 other core concepts in ACT. In acceptance and commitment therapy, ACT, the concepts of self as content and self as context represent different perspectives on self-identity and self-awareness. These perspectives play a pivotal role in how individuals relate to their thoughts, emotions, memories, and other internal experiences. Here are some key points on these 2 concepts. Self as content. Self as content refers to the perspective in which an individual identifies with their thoughts, feelings, memories, roles, and experiences. It's the narrative or story we tell ourselves about who we are based on our past experiences, thoughts, roles, and perceived attributes. All or some of these elements have a tendency to be the basis of labels. The labels can be, for example, I am a hard-working man, I am grounded and concrete, or I am successful. Identifying strongly with self as content can make individuals more susceptible to emotional pain and suffering, especially if the content is negative or self-critical. An additional effect of self as context is a focus on detail, especially details connected to the personal self-image. Examples: I am a failure. I am an anxious person. I am a good mother. For Ted, his experiences have led him to the self-image of a man who will fail. This is very true for him, but still, a misleading identity is blocking his ability to function and choose new paths. Who he thinks he is has become his way of acting, and it is solely circling around him and his own mind. In a way, he has isolated himself from change and from the people surrounding him, putting him in a spot where he has to defend his perceived self-image. Limitations: viewing oneself strictly based on self as content can lead to a rigid sense of self. If one's narrative is predominantly negative, it can contribute to avoiding experiences that contradict this narrative, thereby limiting personal growth. It might be true for you as well, either as your own experience or as your observation of people around you. When you meet a person who is caught in a self as context situation, you will often hear them refer to themselves as what they do. Often, this reference goes to their line of work or their involvement in social or familiar activities. Why don't you take a minute, pause this video, and reflect on how you present yourself? Self as context. Self as context is the broader perspective of the self that is constant, ever-present, and observes all experiences. It's the observing self that can witness thoughts, feelings, and sensations without becoming entangled with them. Connecting with self as context can help individuals distance themselves from the content of their internal experiences and provide a stable perspective from which to observe them without judgment. With this background, it gives the person a wider view of the world, the person in relation to others, and the ability to adapt and adjust to the people and the surroundings. This perspective promotes psychological flexibility, allowing individuals to respond to situations based on their values rather than being overly influenced by transient internal states. Here are some examples of metaphors for self as context. To go from self as content to self as context, it can be useful to use metaphors and, by them, get a new view of one's own thoughts. Let me give you some more details on this subject. A metaphor is meant to change perspective on a certain situation or action. Often, actions are bound by the way thoughts are being dealt with, and if the premises for dealing with thoughts are changed, the actions can change as well. As stated earlier, thoughts can be seen as truth and facts. If we use the metaphor of a chessboard, our thoughts, feelings, and memories are like chess pieces moving across a board. They will constantly change positions, and they will have different predefined functions. The struggle between the chess pieces will be experienced as life, truths, and facts. But in fact, they are changing. The only stable and reliable in the chess game is the board itself. In this metaphor, the board itself represents self as context. While the pieces, or content, may change, the board remains constant. The sky and weather metaphor is another way of presenting the differences between constants and change. In the sky and weather metaphor, our fleeting thoughts and feelings are like the weather, constantly changing, while self as context is the vast sky that remains unchanged by the weather patterns. Examples: recognizing that I am having the thought that I am a failure rather than simply identifying with I am a failure. Being aware of anxiety without becoming engrossed in it, thinking, I am noticing the feeling of anxiety. For Ted, this means that as soon as he manages to correct his inward focus and detach from his own thoughts and details, he will be able to see the world, the people, and the surroundings in a new light. So, instead of presenting himself as a loser by evading situations and people that could expose him, he could be able to watch interactions, systems, and conventions that constitute the environment he lives in. Think for a while what it would mean to you if you presented yourself as a part of a bigger system. Picture the difference between a violinist presenting as a single performer and a violinist presenting as a part of an orchestra. In ACT, fostering an understanding of self as context is pivotal because it helps individuals develop a more flexible and compassionate relationship with themselves. By recognizing that they are not solely defined by their thoughts, emotions, or roles, self as content, individuals can make choices aligned with their values and desired life directions, regardless of the transient internal experiences they might be having. Hopefully, this short video has made the differences clearer and what results can be expected. Seeing oneself as self in context gives the opportunity to view life and life circumstances from a different and wider perspective. When doing this, it's easier to adopt a more flexible and adaptive lifestyle. Welcome to part 3 of this Hexaflex story. This video will be dedicated to the two opposites, experiential avoidance and acceptance. In the previous 2 parts of this series, we have covered the concepts of fusion versus diffusion and self as content versus self as context. In the first video, we covered the different effects of being fused with one's own thoughts and the benefits of managing to diffuse or disconnect from one's own thoughts. In the second video, we covered the problems that occur when the self becomes the content and the benefits of seeing the self in context. We now move to the next part. In acceptance and commitment therapy, ACT, the concepts of experiential avoidance and acceptance are central. They address how individuals relate to their internal experiences, such as emotions, thoughts, memories, and bodily sensations. Here are some key points on these 2 concepts. Experiential avoidance. The meaning of the term experiential avoidance is that a person attempts to avoid or escape from unwanted internal or external experiences, even when doing so creates harm or prevents one from living a valued life. When we talk of internal experiences, we think of the fear of anxiety as an example. Or maybe the fear of falling over dead in the middle of a crowd. The internal struggle can be harsh and tough, but for outside observers, it may not even be noticed. The actions following an internal struggle, though, will often seem strange to the surroundings. When we talk of external experiences, we think of situations that include people or physical objects like buildings or equipment. If other people have done what you experienced as hurtful things, you should avoid meeting that person. Or if you are afraid of small spaces, you won't use the elevator. The more one tries to avoid negative thoughts or feelings, the more they tend to persist. ACT suggests that struggling against these experiences can amplify them. If you follow this channel, we will come back with info on relational frame theory. This theory states that thoughts are actions, and they consist of words. So, a negative statement in your mind will reflect negative emotions. Thinking about something scary will often lead to other scary thoughts. If you are afraid of anxiety, you will often produce more anxiety based on your fear of anxiety. While avoiding negative feelings or thoughts can provide short-term relief, it often leads to long-term distress. For instance, someone might avoid social situations to escape feelings of anxiety, but this can lead to increased loneliness and social isolation over time. The result of experiential avoidance can be that individuals live their lives in a way that's inconsistent with their values and goals. For example, someone might value close relationships but avoid intimacy to escape potential feelings of vulnerability or rejection. An example can be canceling a public presentation due to anxiety, even if giving that presentation aligns with one's career goals and personal values. Sadly, some of the effects of avoiding hurtful, painful, frightening, or provoking situations can lead to serious problems. Think about a person with substance abuse. In all too many cases, substance abuse is a way to cover up painful experiences. Or, think of the person who comes late or procrastinates to avoid the discomfort of a task. Or the person who avoids social gatherings based on a panic attack experience. So, once more, even though avoidance can provide temporary relief, it often prevents individuals from taking actions that align with their long-term values and goals, leading to regret, missed opportunities, and increased distress. And now, we have to continue with Ted's story. He was so distressed by his thoughts of being a failure that he avoided all situations that could possibly put him in a position where he had to make a choice. He was a competent guy. He really knew his stuff and wanted more than anything to get in a position where he could show off his skills. But as long as he avoided all possible chances for doing that, he was left with his own thoughts and his own misery. Now, let's move to the opposite. In ACT, the opposite of avoidance is acceptance. Acceptance refers to the active and conscious embrace of those private events brought on by one's history without unnecessary attempts to change their frequency or form. The problem that occurs when all these thoughts are suppressed can be described by a metaphor. Imagine being in a swimming pool. You have a lot of balls that you are determined to hold underwater. The problem is that some of the balls keep popping up, and you have to put in extra effort to get them under the surface with the other balls. This takes a lot of effort. Your sole focus is to keep the balls under the water. Imagine the distress when the thoughts, represented by submerged balls, resurface despite your efforts to hide them. Acceptance will function in the following manner. And again, you are in the pool. If you let the balls go, they will float to the surface and slowly distribute over the area of the pool. You can watch them, and you can just let them be there. The funny thing is that as soon as you let go of the balls, you can see that you are in a pool located in the lovely garden of a stately mansion. Things you had not seen while you were occupied with the task of holding the balls underwater. In the same way, thoughts that you let come to your attention can be viewed as just that, thoughts. By doing this, you can see your thoughts without judgment or labeling them as good or bad. Just thoughts. It is all about directing your attention to the things you value. To set goals for what you will accomplish. And you can be able to do just that even though the disturbing, stressful, or painful thoughts are there. As long as they do not get your focus, they will be like the balls floating on the surface of the pool. You know they are there, but they do not bother you. You may think that acceptance means resignation or giving up. It's not that. Acceptance is about allowing experiences to occur without judgment and without the immediate impulse to eliminate or avoid them. When you embrace acceptance, it can lead to increased psychological flexibility, allowing individuals to act according to their values, even in the presence of difficult or painful thoughts and emotions. Here's an example to describe acceptance: feeling anxious before a public presentation, but choosing to move forward with the presentation because it aligns with one's values rather than trying to get rid of the anxiety. So, what does Ted do? Luckily, he takes the advice and accepts all the thoughts he has on being a failure. His thoughts are still there, and he can still feel intimidated, but he chooses to direct his energy towards the things he values. Step by step, he can see that his life is getting richer and that more and more of his values are being met. The work situation changes for the better. He gets his chances to go for new assignments, and he does that with all his old thoughts and fears intact, but they are no longer making him avoid or back off. In ACT, the goal is to foster acceptance of internal experiences while decreasing reliance on experiential avoidance. By doing so, individuals can develop greater psychological flexibility, enabling them to act consistently with their values, even in the face of challenging emotions or thoughts. This shift allows for a richer, more fulfilling life. Finally, here is your challenge. Check how you deal with unwanted, discomforting, or frightening situations. If they take away your freedom to act or relate, try regarding your thoughts without emotions and act according to your values instead of the content of your thoughts. And give us feedback on how you are doing. In the next video, we will be talking about how to understand and deal with the past or future, with the opposite being to focus on the present. We would love to hear from you. Until the next video, live according to your values.
Welcome to this fourth video in this series about the Hexaflex from acceptance and commitment therapy. So far, we have covered 3 of 6 central issues in the Hexaflex. We first looked at fusion versus diffusion, the second was self as content versus self as context, and the third was avoidance versus acceptance. And now the fourth, past, future versus present. For the record, acceptance and commitment therapy, ACT, focuses on promoting psychological flexibility. One aspect of this flexibility is being present in the current moment rather than getting caught up in the past or future. As we all know, the past is the past and is impossible to alter. And the future is just that, the future. And still, both past and future can represent a basis for personal trouble. So, here are some points on present versus past, future, within the context of ACT. First, a little explanation of what we mean by past, future. The past refers to memories, regrets, and reflections of the past. It's things we have done or experienced. It can be both physical and emotional, the inaccessible. In the same way, the future encompasses anticipations, plans, worries, and hopes. They can represent challenges and fear of what is coming, the unknown. Getting excessively entangled in the past can lead to rumination and regret. And, as we said, the inaccessible. It is not possible to change the past. Even though we want to, need to, or feel obligated to change it, the past still stays the past. Over-focusing on the future can result in excessive worry, anxiety, and missed current opportunities. Luckily, the future is unknown. How would it be like to know what's coming? Would the worrying become more accessible, or would the planning be any different? Well, if we knew what was lying ahead, why plan? But we could increase the worrying. While ACT doesn't disregard the significance of the past and future, it promotes a balanced relationship with them. It encourages recognizing when past or future thinking is unhelpful and shifting focus back to the present. It's not about negating the past or future but recognizing when they dominate thinking and behavior in ways that are unhelpful or misaligned with values. Past experiences can be informative and provide lessons, but they shouldn't dictate one's identity or worth. Planning for the future is vital, but constant future-oriented worry can prevent engagement with the present. Then we return to Ted. He has a past filled with bad experiences. His memory has numerous examples of bad things that he wishes he could fix and do in another way. During his time, he has lost countless opportunities. Most were because he didn't dare to put himself out there. Some of these opportunities have been lost for real. And that gives him an actual basis for his regrets. He knows that some of the things he is afraid of actually have happened. So he meets his worst fears every time a situation that reminds him of previous failures. The same goes for former bad experiences and former bad people encounters. Ted can vividly imagine the same situations happening in the future. And he ruminates on the possible new losses. And as he fears the future, he sees himself doing the same over again. Imagine what would happen if Ted, instead of constantly ruminating on a past mistake or worrying about a future event, used the ACT techniques to guide him to acknowledge those thoughts but then gently redirect focus to the current activity or situation. Being in the present means being fully engaged and aware of the current moment without judgment. It's about experiencing the here and now. Being present is fundamentally about mindfulness. This involves being aware of your current experiences with openness, interest, and receptiveness. Mindfulness in ACT is about noticing what's happening at the moment without judgment. Often, mindfulness is seen as taking time to relax and concentrate. If you use the traditional or professional approach, you would talk about mindfulness exercises that ground individuals in the present moment, breath-focused practices, engaging fully in a current activity with all senses. It doesn't have to be just that. It can also be standing in a doorway and just standing still for a few moments. It can be focusing on how today is and then going on with the tasks at hand. Or it can be noticing how the breathing goes and how the mind is working right now. The benefits of being present are reduction in rumination and worry, increased clarity on one's current situation, needs, and values, and enhanced ability to take meaningful actions in line with one's values. Being present also has elements of diffusion. We talked about diffusion in video 2 of this series. The focus on here and now will give you the distance from your thoughts and thereby have a diffusion effect. And because you are occupied with the moment, you will be able to observe your thoughts without getting entangled with them, recognizing thoughts as what they are, just thoughts. So whether you sit down and relax, stop in a doorway, or take a moment to watch the day, you will be connecting to the present moment. Current experiences will be your focus instead of past experiences or worrying about the future. In a way, it gives you the possibility to check your current feelings and accept them as they are. Focusing on the present allows you to learn how to make room for different thoughts and feelings, understanding that trying to avoid or change them often leads to distress. As you develop your ability to be in the present moment, you will be able to act according to your values. Sometimes, you will succeed in this, and sometimes, you will fail. But you will be able to develop a compassionate self-awareness that gives you wiggle room to be kind and understanding to yourself. The more you practice to be present, the more you will experience increased flexibility. And the more flexible you get, the more you can engage in your life. When you are an active participant in your life, you will have a richer experience and the possibility to make the most out of each moment. For Ted, this means he faces his past challenges and future scares. And he doesn't do it easily. It's a struggle, and it is scary, but as he goes through new experiences, he can build a new set of experiences. He continues choosing according to his values and dares to watch his thoughts and experiences as something that will always be there, but he can choose to go by his values instead of his experiences. If we use a metaphor to describe what Ted could do, we would say that he can observe the thoughts like clouds in the sky and focus on the steady blue instead. In real life, this often comes down to an internal discussion. What is my focus, and how does this focus align with my goals? If they align, then we move forward. If they do not, we choose another path. In ACT, the present moment is where action can be taken, choices can be made, and life can be fully lived. While the past provides lessons and the future holds aspirations, consistently anchoring oneself in the present can lead to a richer, more flexible, and values-driven life.
Welcome, dear viewer, to this 5th video in the series on the Hexaflex from acceptance and commitment therapy. So far, we have covered avoidance versus acceptance, fusion versus diffusion, and past/future versus present. If you haven't had the chance to watch these videos yet, you will find them all in the Personal Psyche portal. This 5th video is about values, how to find them, and what they are. We have come so far now that things have started to get complicated. First, we have done all the basics. And now they begin to combine. In a way, the next part is one of the most important. It is essential because it helps us shape how we deal with all the other positive and negative elements discussed in earlier videos. This is because if you are stuck in, for example, avoidance, your values can guide you to go in a new direction or choose a different way of dealing. The first thing values do is give a direction. So, what happens if you don't have directions? If we should try to describe what lack of direction means, we would use words like aimlessness or feeling adrift. This can be because your values are unclear or that your choices are not aligned with your values. The results can be feelings of emptiness, meaninglessness, and dissatisfaction. Values are often inherited by the family, society, and network, and each person forms their own foundation or value set. These values are personal and can differ a lot from person to person. The standard part is that the values are part of who we are. When the direction isn't there, it can lead to many different outcomes. Imagine a person exposed to a family tradition, F.X. Like a business. The family expects the business to stay in the family and pressures the child to do what is required. This will be fine for those who share the value of the company and the family. But for those with values not in line with the social demands, this can lead to the feelings described before. Or, if the people around you pressure you to seek a career that involves good salaries and the opportunity to make a lot of money, your values and interests are elsewhere. It will be hard to let go of the chance, but at the same time, not going with your inner wishes or dreams can make you end up in discomfort and discontentment. Experiences from the past or fears of the future can also prevent you from reaching situations that align with your values. If you have people encounters or painful experiences, you can avoid the confrontations of these feelings or situations and miss out on your values and dreams. Our friend Ted had this kind of problem. He had a very high standard that he wanted to keep. He demanded the best of himself and strived to be as good as he wanted. But his experiences and his fears of what could go wrong held him back. He couldn't face the fact that all his worries might be confirmed. After all, he had experiences that had gone wrong, and he had vivid memories of the pain, the shame, and the fears that those experiences had caused. Despite what he thought was right, Ted avoided situations where he feared terrible experiences. He was conflicted by his lack of ability to deal with it and by the fact that he had abandoned his values to try not to get hurt again. If you have the time or the desire to explore your way of handling your values, feel free to pause the video and take a while to think. Check if your values align with your actual life. If they do, you are most likely confident and happy with most of your life. If your values do not align with real life, I recommend you evaluate, find out what you want, and decide to go in the direction that satisfies your values. And the reason is, your values serve as a compass. You have an internal guide that you can use to guide you to the best choices for your life, the best alternatives following your values. The values represent what you freely have chosen as your directives for how you want to live your life. They are word-based constructions and dynamic and evolving patterns of activity. As you are active and aware of your reactions and emotions, your values will become more apparent and can actively guide you in the direction you want to live. When your values are clear, you can use them as guidance, but they will also motivate you when you find yourself in complex or emotionally challenging situations. As life goes on, you will meet painful, stressful, and even hurtful situations among the golden, good, and happy experiences you will have. Your values are also the basis for how you decide to set your goals. We divide goals from values by the way they can be measured. Goals have a specific time frame or endpoint where we can say that the goal is fulfilled. Values represent more ongoing situations, like I want to be a great father or I want to grow my knowledge, and therefore, I read books. It's sort of a work in progress. Values can also help in developing psychological flexibility. A clear understanding of one's values can help to adapt to situations with openness, awareness, and focus. You then can be present, open up, and do what matters. There will always be challenges, and the way we meet these challenges will significantly influence our experience and feelings of worth. Your values can be guides to better handling, They can be your foundation to increase your resilience and give you self-compassion while you learn and develop. Now, let's return to Ted. He has a struggle in his life. There is a severe conflict between his values, which say he should do his best and show his best, and his life, where he struggles with exposing himself because he is afraid of failure. As he discovers that he can defy his fears, he also gets a clearer picture of his values. The values then become an inner strength that he can use in deciding what he wants and how he can stay flexible and resilient when he faces his fears. As Ted gets more experience dealing with his difficult decisions, he sees more and more of his values met, and his self-esteem rises. As this video is about to finish, I want to present you with a challenge. Take a piece of paper. Draw a line down the middle. On the left side, write the situations you struggle with. On the right, write which values these affects. If your reaction to situations gives you a strong emotional response, your corresponding values are most likely crucial to you. Then, picture yourself going through the situation in a way that satisfies your values. This form of mental training will help you deal with difficulties better and more fulfilling. So, give yourself a chance, be patient, and give yourself room for mistakes. You will master this better as you try and focus on your values.
Welcome to this sixth and final video regarding the opposites in the Hexaflex from acceptance and commitment therapy. We have covered the 5 other concepts in the previous videos, so if you haven't seen them, go to the Personal Psyche portal and view them there. The basic concept in ACT is that each part of the 6 variants in the Hexaflex has an impact on personal flexibility. The parts we have dealt with are avoidance versus acceptance, fusion versus diffusion, self as content versus self as context, past, future versus present moment, and lack of direction versus values. And now we are at the 6th pair, lack of action versus committed action. So what is the content of lack of action? As the term says, nothing much is happening. There could be some action, but the action or activity doesn't happen for some reason. The reasons for this can be many. In the following, we will take you through some major areas that can cause this lack of action. Diaresis. At its core, a lack of action in ACT is often about avoiding discomfort. This could be emotional discomfort, like anxiety or sadness, cognitive discomfort, such as facing challenging thoughts or beliefs, or even physical discomfort. For instance, someone might avoid starting a challenging project at work because they fear failure or criticism. This avoidance can be a way to steer clear of these uncomfortable feelings. While avoiding action can provide short-term relief from discomfort, it typically leads to negative long-term consequences. These can include missed opportunities, stagnation in personal or professional growth, and even a reinforcement of the fears or negative beliefs that led to the avoidance in the first place. For example, not applying for jobs due to fear of rejection may temporarily reduce anxiety but can lead to long-term unemployment and increased feelings of inadequacy. In ACT, increasing psychological flexibility is key to addressing a lack of action. Psychological flexibility involves being open to experiencing thoughts and feelings without judgment while continuing to move toward one's values. It means recognizing that avoiding discomfort is a natural response but not always helpful or practical. One way to overcome a lack of action is through clarifying personal values, understanding what is truly important and meaningful to an individual. Once these values are clear, it becomes easier to take committed actions that align with these values, even in the face of discomfort. This shift from inaction to action is not about ignoring or getting rid of uncomfortable feelings but rather about moving forward despite them. Techniques like mindfulness and cognitive diffusion are used in ACT to help individuals deal with the thoughts and feelings contributing to a lack of action. Mindfulness encourages being present and fully engaged with the current moment without judgment. Cognitive diffusion involves stepping back and observing one's thoughts rather than getting entangled. In summary, a lack of action in ACT is primarily an avoidance-based response to emotional, cognitive, or physical discomfort. Overcoming this lack of action involves increasing psychological flexibility, clarifying personal values, and learning to take actions that align with these values despite uncomfortable thoughts and feelings. Impulsivity, particularly in the context of acceptance and commitment therapy, ACT, is a multifaceted concept that involves acting quickly and without sufficient thought or consideration of the consequences. This behavior is typically driven by an immediate desire to escape or reduce unpleasant internal experiences. Here's a more detailed look at impulsivity within the framework of ACT. Impulsivity often occurs in response to an internal urge for instant relief from discomfort. This discomfort could be emotional, like anxiety or sadness, physical, such as pain or fatigue, or cognitive, involving distressing thoughts or memories. For example, someone might impulsively spend money to feel a temporary rush of pleasure, disregarding their long-term financial goals. At the heart of impulsivity is the desire to quickly escape or alleviate internal discomfort. This can lead to actions inconsistent with one's long-term goals or values. For instance, someone might react angrily in a moment of frustration, damaging a relationship that is important to them. While impulsive actions can provide immediate relief or gratification, they often have negative long-term consequences. These can include damage to relationships, financial difficulties, health problems, or personal or professional development setbacks. These longer-term repercussions frequently overshadow the immediate comfort gained from impulsive actions. In ACT, a significant focus is placed on actions aligned with personal values. Impulsivity typically represents a deviation from this principle, as impulsive actions are often more about escaping discomfort than moving toward what is genuinely essential to the individual. ACT employs various strategies to help individuals manage impulsivity. These include mindfulness, which encourages being present and aware of one's thoughts and feelings without immediately reacting. Another strategy is cognitive diffusion, which helps individuals create space between their thoughts and actions, reducing the likelihood of impulsive behavior. Increasing psychological flexibility is crucial in managing impulsivity. This involves being open to experiencing all thoughts and feelings, comfortable or not, and making conscious choices aligned with one's values rather than reacting automatically to internal experiences. In summary, impulsivity in the context of ACT is characterized by quick, reflexive actions often aimed at escaping uncomfortable internal states. These actions can provide short-term relief but often lead to adverse long-term outcomes and are typically not aligned with one's deeper values and goals. Managing impulsivity involves developing skills like mindfulness and cognitive diffusion and striving towards greater psychological flexibility, where actions are more deliberate and aligned with personal values. Ted used to seek protection in avoiding possible catastrophes and ended up with more anxiety and uneasiness. When he was afraid, he took the easy way out. His values were toned down. He ignored his deep wishes and let the opportunities go. Committed action is a central concept in acceptance and commitment therapy, ACT. It is the opposite of inaction and is crucial in its therapeutic process. It refers to consciously choosing and persistently engaging in actions aligned with one's values, even in difficult or uncomfortable internal experiences. Here's a deeper look at committed action. At the heart of committed action is the alignment with personal values. Values in ACT are defined as chosen life directions or qualities of personally meaningful action. Committed action is about doing things that move you closer to the life you want based on what truly matters to you. For example, a person who values health may exercise regularly despite feeling tired or unmotivated. Committed action acknowledges that pursuing meaningful activities will often bring challenges and discomfort. This could include fear, anxiety, doubt, or physical pain. Rather than avoiding these feelings, ACT encourages acceptance of them as a natural part of life's journey, especially when moving towards meaningful goals. Unlike impulsive actions, which are driven by a desire for immediate relief, committed actions are focused on long-term fulfillment and well-being. This often means choosing to do things that are challenging or uncomfortable in the short term because they contribute to a meaningful, fulfilling life in the long run. Committed action is not about rigidly sticking to a specific behavior or goal. It's also about being flexible and adaptable in the pursuit of values. This means adjusting one's actions and strategies as needed while staying true to one's core values. Actions within this framework are chosen consciously and are not automatic responses to internal or external stimuli. They require self-awareness and deliberation, where the individual considers their values and long-term goals before acting. Committed action often requires persistent effort and resilience. It involves staying the course, even when slow progress or setbacks occur. This persistence is supported by the understanding that the journey towards living a values-driven life is often challenging but ultimately rewarding. ACT uses techniques such as mindfulness and cognitive diffusion to support committed action. Mindfulness helps individuals to stay present and engaged in their actions. In contrast, Cognitive diffusion helps them maintain a healthy distance from unhelpful thoughts and emotions that might otherwise hinder their progress. And we have come to the end of this topic. Our friend Ted finally learned to use all the tools in the Hexaflex. He started to go for the things he valued, not without bad emotions, but despite them. And as his values got clearer, he dealt with more and more difficult situations in his life. Now, he only has to stay on the job and fulfill his values through good goal setting and persistence. Life is exciting, fun, and worth living. One of the reasons for that is that humans are allowed free will. Even when it comes to pain and discomfort, we still have the capability and possibility to choose. During these videos, we have tried to explain the benefits of improving your life if you need it and understand what happens when someone else needs it. The Personal Psyche Portal has started to spread knowledge and understanding. Our goal is that you shall have a good life, and we know by experience that Eleanor Roosevelt's words are true. It's not about what happens to you. It's how you deal with it that matters. Please take time to give us feedback on the channel in general and this video series especially. Please like and subscribe. We will be posting videos regularly, so don't miss out on them.
Here is a breakdown each of the 6 core processes in the ACT Hexaflex, which are typically seen as the essential components of acceptance and commitment therapy, ACT, along with 6 additional aspects often linked to deeper understanding and practice within this therapeutic approach. The ACT Hexaflex framework comprises interconnected elements that support psychological flexibility, which is the central aim of ACT. 1. Cognitive diffusion definition. Cognitive diffusion is the process of learning to perceive thoughts as mere mental events rather than literal truths. This aspect of ACT encourages individuals to step back from their thoughts, reducing the impact and influence of negative or unhelpful thinking. Goal. The goal is to help individuals stop getting fused or overly identified with their thoughts, which often triggers negative emotions and unproductive behaviors. Instead, they learn to observe their thoughts from a detached perspective. Techniques. Saying thoughts out loud in a funny voice. Repeating a word until it loses meaning. Labeling thoughts as just thoughts without assigning them undue importance. Benefit. Cognitive diffusion reduces the power of distressing thoughts and helps individuals react in a more flexible and constructive way, improving their ability to handle difficult situations. 2. Acceptance. Definition. Acceptance in ACT refers to fully embracing one's feelings, thoughts, and bodily sensations without trying to change, suppress, or avoid them. It's about allowing internal experiences to be as they are, rather than battling against them. Goal. Acceptance encourages individuals to experience discomfort without letting it prevent them from taking actions aligned with their values. By accepting rather than fighting their feelings, individuals experience less psychological distress and gain greater emotional resilience. Techniques. Mindfulness exercises that focus on staying present with emotions, engaging with physical sensations and letting them pass naturally, allowing unwanted feelings without assigning judgments to them. Benefit. Acceptance reduces the energy spent on avoidance strategies, thereby freeing individuals to engage more fully in meaningful activities. 3. Contact with the present moment definition. This aspect emphasizes mindfulness and being grounded in the here and now. Contact with the present moment allows individuals to shift their attention away from past regrets or future worries, focusing instead on their current experience. Goal. The primary goal is to increase awareness of the present, enabling individuals to respond to situations based on the current context, rather than getting caught in habitual or automatic reactions. Techniques. Focused breathing exercises. Grounding techniques, like naming sounds, sights, or sensations around. Awareness practices, which emphasize observing without judgment. Benefit. Regular practice of present moment awareness cultivates psychological flexibility and helps individuals make more conscious, value-driven choices. 4. Self as context definition. Self as context refers to the concept of viewing oneself from a broad, observing perspective rather than identifying too closely with specific thoughts, feelings, or roles. It's a sense of self that remains constant despite changing circumstances and internal experiences. Goal. The goal is to cultivate a stable sense of self that isn't defined by transient thoughts or emotions, allowing individuals to maintain a balanced perspective even in challenging situations. Techniques. Observing self-exercises, where individuals reflect on their experiences from an observer's point of view. Perspective-taking exercises that encourage seeing oneself as a continuous presence across different experiences. Benefit. Self as context builds resilience by providing a stable, unchanging foundation from which individuals can view their inner experiences without becoming overwhelmed. 5. Values clarification. Definition. Values clarification involves identifying and committing to personal values, which are deeply held beliefs and motivations that guide actions and choices. Values provide a sense of direction and purpose in life. Goal. The aim is to help individuals become more aware of their values and use them as a compass to guide their actions, fostering a sense of fulfillment and meaning. Techniques. Values identification exercises, such as lists of potential values or value sorting. Reflective questioning about what truly matters and brings satisfaction. Visioning exercises that picture a values-aligned future. Benefit. Clarifying values aids in making consistent choices aligned with what is personally significant, enhancing life satisfaction and motivation. 6. Committed action definition. Committed action involves taking concrete steps towards value-driven goals despite potential obstacles. It's the process of setting and pursuing actions that reflect one's values. Goal. The purpose is to encourage active engagement in life through deliberate actions that align with personal values, leading to a more meaningful and fulfilling existence. Techniques. Goal-setting exercises focused on short and long-term aspirations. Identifying and overcoming potential barriers to valued actions. Creating action plans with realistic, achievable steps. Benefit. Committed action strengthens perseverance, building a sense of accomplishment and progress even when challenges arise. 7. Psychological flexibility. Definition. Psychological flexibility is the overarching goal of ACT, representing the ability to adapt behavior and thinking in response to situational demands while staying connected to values. Goal. To help individuals effectively navigate life's challenges by being open, present, and committed to value-based actions rather than rigid or avoidant responses. Techniques. This aspect is more of an outcome achieved by working through all the Hexaflex processes rather than a specific technique. Benefit. Increased psychological flexibility contributes to greater emotional well-being, resilience, and adaptive functioning across various life situations. 8. The role of language in shaping experience. Definition. ACT highlights the role of language and cognition in shaping human experiences and reactions. This aspect recognizes that language can be both a tool for growth and a source of mental distress, depending on how it is used. Goal. To create awareness about the impact of language on thoughts and feelings, helping individuals use language in ways that support mental well-being rather than exacerbate distress. Techniques. Awareness exercises around how language shapes experiences. Diffusion techniques to break the power of language over internal experiences. Benefit. By examining how language influences experience, individuals can develop a more detached and flexible approach to their thoughts, reducing reactivity and emotional suffering. 9. Experiential avoidance. Definition. Experiential avoidance is the tendency to avoid thoughts, feelings, or memories that are uncomfortable. ACT encourages individuals to confront and accept these experiences instead of avoiding them. Goal. To reduce avoidance behaviors that often lead to greater emotional distress over time and promote healthier engagement with uncomfortable experiences. Techniques. Gradual exposure to avoided experiences in a supportive way. Reflection on the costs and consequences of avoidance. Acceptance and mindfulness exercises that encourage tolerating discomfort. Benefit. Reducing experiential avoidance allows individuals to face life challenges more effectively, fostering growth and emotional resilience. 10. Behavioral flexibility definition. Behavioral flexibility involves the ability to adapt actions in response to changing circumstances. In ACT, this flexibility allows individuals to act in line with their values, even in the face of difficult thoughts and emotions. Goal. To help individuals become more adaptable and proactive, making choices that reflect their values instead of being driven solely by emotional reactions. Techniques. Practicing different responses to challenging situations, reflecting on actions and adjusting them according to outcomes and values. Mindfulness of behavior patterns and consciously shifting them. Benefit. Behavioral flexibility leads to greater satisfaction and success, as it promotes adaptive responses rather than rigid, automatic reactions. 11. Creative hopelessness. Definition. Creative hopelessness is a strategy in ACT aimed at helping individuals recognize the ineffectiveness of past efforts to control their feelings or avoid pain. This realization opens the door to new, more constructive ways of living. Goal: to create a sense of hopelessness around ineffective strategies, which fosters openness to new, value-driven approaches. Techniques: reflection exercises on past attempts to avoid or control pain. Awareness-building exercises on the consequences of current coping mechanisms. Exploring alternatives that align more closely with values and acceptance. Benefit: creative hopelessness can free individuals from the cycle of avoidance and enable them to adopt a more open, values-based mindset. 12. Compassionate self-awareness. Definition: compassionate self-awareness involves developing a kind and understanding relationship with oneself. In ACT, this aspect encourages self-compassion as a foundation for accepting challenging thoughts and emotions. Goal: to build a supportive inner voice that can reduce self-criticism and foster greater resilience, especially when dealing with distressing thoughts and feelings. Techniques: self-compassion exercises, like loving-kindness meditation. Practicing gentle self-talk during challenging times. Developing an awareness of one's inner critic and countering it with compassion. Benefit: compassionate self-awareness provides emotional strength and helps individuals approach difficult experiences without self-judgment, enhancing well-being and personal growth. Summary and integration: the ACT Hexaflex, through these 12 aspects, offers a comprehensive approach to enhancing psychological flexibility by fostering an accepting, mindful, and value-oriented perspective on life. Here's how they come together to support mental health and resilience. 1. Cognitive Defusion and acceptance teach individuals to approach thoughts and emotions with openness. 2. Contact with the present moment and self as context provide grounding in the current experience, helping individuals see themselves beyond specific emotions or roles. 3. Values clarification and committed action encourage actions that lead to a fulfilling, purpose-driven life. 4. Psychological flexibility is the overarching goal, achieved through all 6 core processes. 5. Here is a breakdown each of the 6 core processes in the ACT Hexaflex, which are typically seen as the essential components of acceptance and commitment therapy, ACT, along with 6 additional aspects often linked to deeper understanding and practice within this therapeutic approach. The ACT Hexaflex framework comprises interconnected elements that support psychological flexibility, which is the central aim of ACT. 1. Cognitive Defusion definition. Cognitive diffusion is the process of learning to perceive thoughts as mere mental events rather than literal truths. This aspect of ACT encourages individuals to step back from their thoughts, reducing the impact and influence of negative or unhelpful thinking. Goal. The goal is to help individuals stop getting fused or overly identified with their thoughts, which often triggers negative emotions and unproductive behaviors. Instead, they learn to observe their thoughts from a detached perspective. Techniques: saying thoughts out loud in a funny voice, repeating a word until it loses meaning, labeling thoughts as just thoughts without assigning them undue importance. Benefit: cognitive diffusion reduces the power of distressing thoughts and helps individuals react in a more flexible and constructive way, improving their ability to handle difficult situations. 2. Acceptance definition. Acceptance in ACT refers to fully embracing one's feelings, thoughts, and bodily sensations without trying to change, suppress, or avoid them. It's about allowing internal experiences to be as they are, rather than battling against them. Goal: acceptance encourages individuals to experience discomfort without letting it prevent them from taking actions aligned with their values. By accepting rather than fighting their feelings, individuals experience less psychological distress and gain greater emotional resilience. Techniques: mindfulness exercises that focus on staying present with emotions, engaging with physical sensations and letting them pass naturally, allowing unwanted feelings without assigning judgments to them. Benefit: acceptance reduces the energy spent on avoidance strategies, thereby freeing individuals to engage more fully in meaningful activities. 3. Contact with the present moment definition. This aspect emphasizes mindfulness and being grounded in the here and now. Contact with the present moment allows individuals to shift their attention away from past regrets or future worries, focusing instead on their current experience. Goal: the primary goal is to increase awareness of the present, enabling individuals to respond to situations based on the current context, rather than getting caught in habitual or automatic reactions. Techniques: focused breathing exercises, grounding techniques like naming sounds, sights, or sensations around. Awareness practices, which emphasize observing without judgment. Benefit: Regular practice of present moment awareness cultivates psychological flexibility and helps individuals make more conscious, value-driven choices. 4. Self as context definition. Self as context refers to the concept of viewing oneself from a broad, observing perspective rather than identifying too closely with specific thoughts, feelings, or roles. It's a sense of self that remains constant despite changing circumstances and internal experiences. Goal. The goal is to cultivate a stable sense of self that isn't defined by transient thoughts or emotions, allowing individuals to maintain a balanced perspective even in challenging situations. Techniques. Observing self-exercises, where individuals reflect on their experiences from an observer's point of view. Perspective-taking exercises that encourage seeing oneself as a continuous presence across different experiences. Benefit. Self as context builds resilience by providing a stable, unchanging foundation from which individuals can view their inner experiences without becoming overwhelmed. 5. Values clarification. Definition. Values clarification involves identifying and committing to personal values, which are deeply held beliefs and motivations that guide actions and choices. Values provide a sense of direction and purpose in life. Goal. The aim is to help individuals become more aware of their values and use them as a compass to guide their actions, fostering a sense of fulfillment and meaning. Techniques. Values identification exercises, such as lists of potential values or value sorting. Reflective questioning about what truly matters and brings satisfaction. Visioning exercises that picture a values-aligned future. Benefit. Clarifying values aids in making consistent choices aligned with what is personally significant, enhancing life satisfaction and motivation. 6. Committed action definition. Committed action involves taking concrete steps towards value-driven goals despite potential obstacles. It's the process of setting and pursuing actions that reflect one's values. Goal. The purpose is to encourage active engagement in life through deliberate actions that align with personal values, leading to a more meaningful and fulfilling existence. Techniques. Goal-setting exercises focused on short and long-term aspirations. Identifying and overcoming potential barriers to valued actions. Creating action plans with realistic, achievable steps. Benefit. Committed action strengthens perseverance, building a sense of accomplishment and progress even when challenges arise. 7. Psychological flexibility. Definition. Psychological flexibility is the overarching goal of ACT, representing the ability to adapt behavior and thinking in response to situational demands while staying connected to values. Goal. To help individuals effectively navigate life's challenges by being open, present, and committed to value-based actions rather than rigid or avoidant responses. Techniques. This aspect is more of an outcome achieved by working through all the Hexaflex processes rather than a specific technique. Benefit. Increased psychological flexibility contributes to greater emotional well-being, resilience, and adaptive functioning across various life situations. 8. The role of language in shaping experience. Definition. ACT highlights the role of language and cognition in shaping human experiences and reactions. This aspect recognizes that language can be both a tool for growth and a source of mental distress, depending on how it is used. Goal. To create awareness about the impact of language on thoughts and feelings, helping individuals use language in ways that support mental well-being rather than exacerbate distress. Techniques. Awareness exercises around how language shapes experiences. Diffusion techniques to break the power of language over internal experiences. Benefit. By examining how language influences experience, individuals can develop a more detached and flexible approach to their thoughts, reducing reactivity and emotional suffering. 9. Experiential avoidance. Definition. Experiential avoidance is the tendency to avoid thoughts, feelings, or memories that are uncomfortable. ACT encourages individuals to confront and accept these experiences instead of avoiding them. Goal. To reduce avoidance behaviors that often lead to greater emotional distress over time and promote healthier engagement with uncomfortable experiences. Techniques. Gradual exposure to avoided experiences in a supportive way. Reflection on the costs and consequences of avoidance. Acceptance and mindfulness exercises that encourage tolerating discomfort. Benefit. Reducing experiential avoidance allows individuals to face life challenges more effectively, fostering growth and emotional resilience. 10. Behavioral flexibility definition. Behavioral flexibility involves the ability to adapt actions in response to changing circumstances. In ACT, this flexibility allows individuals to act in line with their values, even in the face of difficult thoughts and emotions. Goal: to help individuals become more adaptable and proactive, making choices that reflect their values instead of being driven solely by emotional reactions. Techniques: practicing different responses to challenging situations, reflecting on actions and adjusting them according to outcomes and values, mindfulness of behavior patterns and consciously shifting them. Benefit: behavioral flexibility leads to greater satisfaction and success, as it promotes adaptive responses rather than rigid, automatic reactions. 11. Creative hopelessness. Definition: creative hopelessness is a strategy in ACT aimed at helping individuals recognize the ineffectiveness of past efforts to control their feelings or avoid pain. This realization opens the door to new, more constructive ways of living. Goal: to create a sense of hopelessness around ineffective strategies, which fosters openness to new, value-driven approaches. Techniques: reflection exercises on past attempts to avoid or control pain, awareness-building exercises on the consequences of current coping mechanisms, exploring alternatives that align more closely with values and acceptance. Benefit: creative hopelessness can free individuals from the cycle of avoidance and enable them to adopt a more open, values-based mindset. 12. Compassionate self-awareness. Definition: compassionate self-awareness involves developing a kind and understanding relationship with oneself. In ACT, this aspect encourages self-compassion as a foundation for accepting challenging thoughts and emotions. Goal: to build a supportive inner voice that can reduce self-criticism and foster greater resilience, especially when dealing with distressing thoughts and feelings. Techniques: self-compassion exercises, like loving-kindness meditation, practicing gentle self-talk during challenging times, developing an awareness of one's inner critic and countering it with compassion. Benefit: compassionate self-awareness provides emotional strength and helps individuals approach difficult experiences without self-judgment, enhancing well-being and personal growth. Summary and integration: the ACT Hexaflex, through these 12 aspects, offers a comprehensive approach to enhancing psychological flexibility by fostering an accepting, mindful, and value-oriented perspective on life. Here's how they come together to support mental health and resilience. 1. Cognitive defusion and acceptance teach individuals to approach thoughts and emotions with openness. 2. Contact with the present moment and self as context provide grounding in the current experience, helping individuals see themselves beyond specific emotions or roles. 3. Values clarification and committed action encourage actions that lead to a fulfilling, purpose-driven life. 4. Psychological flexibility is the overarching goal, achieved through all 6 core processes. 5. We hope you enjoyed this video. Subscribe and like, and we will see you in the next video.